The year 2025 was a rough one, but despite everything, it delivered something incredible on the entertainment front. This year gave us some of the most memorable, terrifying, and emotionally complex villains we've seen in a long time, from tragic antagonists to full blown agents of chaos. The bar was raised across movies, games, anime, and television. So many standout performances, I decided to dedicate an entire video to counting down the top 10 best villains of 2025. So buckle up because things are about to get dark. Now, on with the show. But before we dive into the list, let's talk about the honorable mention, the almost made it villain of 2025. I have to give a quick honorable mention to someone or something that cleverly clawed its way onto the list, and that's Loot from Hazbin Hotel. She delivered one of the best villain songs we've heard in years, putting current day Disney to shame. Gravity, the mix of vengefulness, sorrow, and raw hatred in this performance was absolutely chilling. You could feel every ounce of her rage towards the heroes, and the fact that she was completely willing to wipe out millions just to get revenge made her one of the most terrifying antagonists we've seen in modern animation. But as incredible as she barely appeared in season 2. With so little screen time, she ended up benched for most of the season, so sadly, Loot didn't make the official list. But now, talking about the actual top 10, starting off the list at number 10 is Noak, the main antagonist of Orb, the Movements of the Earth. A former mercenary turned high ranking inquisitor for the church, Noak dedicated his life to eradicating heliocentric research, which he views as dangerous heresy that threatens the natural order of the world. What makes Noak truly terrifying is that he isn't a mustache twirling monster. He's a deeply complex antagonist who generally believes he's doing the right thing. In his mind, he's preserving stability and protecting humanity from chaos. In reality, his actions are merciless, systematic, and soaked in blood. He directly causes the deaths of multiple protagonists, all in the name of suppressing the truth. Noak routinely subjects suspected heretics to brutal, mythological torture to extract information. He executes scholars who research or even support the heliocentric theory. He relentlessly hunts Raphael, a young and brilliant scholar, pushing him so far that Raphael is forced to unalive himself just to escape further torment. He arrests and executes Hubert, the man who originally initiated the research after carefully observing him. He murders Antony, a bishop who had been convinced by the evidence simply to prevent the truth from spreading further. He even kills his own colleagues whenever they threaten his investigation. And when repression alone isn't enough, he burns churches and destroys research materials to erase scientific progress entirely. And when repression alone isn't enough, he burns churches and destroys research materials to erase scientific progress entirely. What's most chilling is that even when confronted with the logical truth of the cosmos, Noak refuses to stop. He maintains his persecution until the very end. In his final moments, he openly admits that he was the villain of the story, that he stood on the wrong side of history even though he believed his violence was justified. And that what makes Noak resonate. Being on the wrong side of history doesn't always feel like evil while you're living it. It can feel righteous, necessary, even noble. And in today's world where beliefs can get you demonized overnight, that idea hits uncomfortably close to home. That's why Noak earns the number 10 spot. Number 9 is Rezi from Chainsaw Man movie Rezi Arc. Easily one of the best, unpredictable, and mostly devastating villains of the year. Rezi didn't just steal Denji's heart, she smashed it into tiny pieces and walked away without looking back. Her entire relationship with Denji was built on manipulation. She was sent by the KGB with one mission: get close to Denji, use him, and destroy him. And she didn't hesitate. Rezi tore through countless agents and operatives, all just stepping stones in her path towards completing her mission. That blend of charm, danger, and lethal skill made her one of the most compelling antagonists the series has ever seen. What really made her stand out, though, was the tragedy woven into her story. After their brutal fight, the two of them almost fell in love for real. For a moment, it looked like they might escape the world around them and choose each other instead. But fate had other plans, and a certain villain stepped in to make sure that the reunion would never happen. And no, I won't spoil who. Reze was unforgettable, ruthless, and heartbreakingly human, earning her a solid spot on the list. Sliding into number 8 is Absolute Bane, one of the most brutal reinterpretations of an already terrifying villain. I'll be honest, when I was younger, I wasn't much of a Bane fan, but as I got older, I started to realize just how hardcore he really was. And the Absolute universe takes that a whole new bone-shattering level. In this continuity, everything about Bane is dialed up to 100. An Absolute Batman infiltrates Arkham to rescue his captured mutated friend Waylon Jones. Things spiral out of control the second he crosses paths with Absolute Bane. On Earth 1, Batman can at least hold his own, but in the Absolute universe, Bane tears through him with horrifying ease, breaking every single one of Batman's bones in minutes. Just not in a fight, it's a massacre. His backstory is equally chilling. Raised in a war-torn nation, his father, a rebel fighter, tried to teach him the value of freedom and the dream of a peaceful homeland. But Bane was never built for peace. He reveled in the chaos of war. He embraced it. He was molded by it. Ultimately, he murdered his own father and sabotaged the peace treaty, just so the war could rage on. That alone would put him on this list. Absolute Bane doesn't stop there. He forces Arkham scientists to perform the same horrific experiments on Absolute Batman that were once done to him. And if that wasn't cruel enough, he also mutilates and cripples Batman's closest allies, twisting them into potential future villains. He's not just breaking bodies, he's breaking futures. And just when you think Absolute Bane couldn't get any more unhinged, his story reaches a conclusion that's as savage as it's poetic. In the end, Batman and Killer Croc are forced into an uneasy alliance to finally bring him down. What follows isn't a heroic showdown, it's a war of attrition. The fight is so vicious and so relentless that Batman doesn't just defeat Bane, he erases him. By the time it's over, Bane is beaten into a literal pile of mush, his reign ending not with glory but with utter annihilation. What's left of him is barely human. His brain and nervous system are preserved in a jar, trapped in eternal awareness, powerless to move or act. His fate even crueler, he's forced to sit there and watch as his homeland, the war he loved, the chaos he nurtured, the nation he destroyed peace for, burns to the ground on live television. No army, no control, no war left to worship. Absolute Bane didn't just lose the fight, he lost everything. Number 7 is Lex Luthor from Superman, the new Superman movie by James Gunn. And this version might be the most merciless the character has ever been on the big screen in a long time. This wasn't just a jealous billionaire with a grudge. This was a man running a long game of psychological warfare, always 20 steps ahead of Superman. Lex's cruelty started with the unthinkable. He cloned Superman, but he didn't stop there. Using manipulated footage of Clark's parents, Lex turned the entire world against him, making it look like they wanted their son to rule Earth. The lies spread like wildfire, and public trust collapsed almost overnight. With humanity turning on him, Superman was pressured into surrendering himself to Lex, only to be imprisoned in a pocket dimension where he was forced to suffer at the hands of Metamorpho. What makes this version of Lex stand out is his obsession became. His hatred burned so intensely that he nearly destroyed the world just to prove a point. And when Krypton finally beats him into submission, it's undeniably satisfying, even if the moment felt like a little too reminiscent of the first Avengers movie. Still, watching Lex finally lose control after orchestrating so much suffering was a payoff that felt earned. This Lex Luthor wasn't just a villain, he was a master manipulator who almost won. Coming in at number 6 is the Sentry. This one hits on a much deeper level than most villains on this list. Robert Reynolds wasn't born a monster. He was a broken man suffering from paranoid schizophrenia, already fighting a war inside his own mind. And as if that wasn't cruel enough, he was experimented on, stripped of his humanity, and locked away in cold storage like a failed prototype. When the Thunderbolts finally liberated him, it felt like a victory, at least at first. But while his freedom was good for Robert, it turned out to be catastrophic for the rest of humanity. He was groomed by the very CEO responsible for his torment, manipulated into becoming the superhero he was originally engineered to be. With godlike power layered on top of untreated mental illness, the result was inevitable. Robert became the Void, a force of destruction that began wiping out humanity in a disturbingly similar way to Thanos in Infinity War. What makes this story so haunting is that none of it feels malicious at its core. The Sentry didn't want to be a villain. He was overwhelmed, fractured, and pushed far past his breaking point. Thankfully, it's the new Black Widow who finally reaches him, not with fists, but with empathy, allowing Robert to regain control and undo the devastation he caused. The biggest reason this character earned a spot on this list is personal. I also live with schizophrenia and I understand how isolating and overwhelming it can feel. How it can make you want to lash out at a world that doesn't understand you. Seeing the struggle reflected in Robert Reynolds made this character resonate with me in a way few villains ever have. The Sentry isn't just a villain, he's a tragedy, and that's what makes him unforgettable. Number 5 is Ultimate Reed Richards, aka The Maker and the Illuminati, from the Marvel Ultimate Universe. Alright, yes, I'm technically cheating a little here, but when it comes to the Maker, the Illuminati is a package deal. And honestly, that only makes this entry more terrifying. Over the past year and a half, Ultimate Reed Richards has done the unthinkable. He recreated the Ultimate Universe itself, rewriting history from the ground up. His goal wasn't conquest, it was control. He systematically prevented superheroes from ever becoming the heroes they were meant to be, quietly shaping the world into a place where resistance never had a chance to exist. And his pettiness toward the Reed Richards of Earth 616 is downright chilling. To prove a point, the Maker destroyed the recreated Fantastic Four and subjected the new Reed Richards to psychologically torment so extreme that it ultimately turning him into Doctor Doom. This wasn't strategy, it was spite delivered with surgical precision. While the Illuminati pulled the strings behind the scenes, controlled the media, manipulated social narratives, and enforced a tyrannical global order, anyone who dared to question them was silenced, captured, erased, or worse. The world didn't realize it was living under a dictatorship until it was far too late. And when Howard Stark, aka the Iron Man of that universe, temporarily managed to lock the Maker away, the Illuminati responded with not with restraint, but with pure retaliation. Their counterstrike devastated a massive portion of New York, killing Norman Osborn and Aunt May Parker in the process. A message was sent loud and clear: defy them and the world bleeds. And the scariest part, everything I've mentioned here only scratches the surface of their crimes. The Maker isn't just evil, he's methodical, vindictive, and terrifyingly convinced he's right. That's what earns him the number 5 spot. Coming in at number 4 is Ozma, from the first Berserker, Kazan. One of the most tragic and devastating villains of the year. His fall isn't rooted in ambition or hunger for power. It's born from betrayal, grief, and a world that punished its greatest heroes. Ozma grew up alongside Reese and Kazan, bound by friendship and loyalty. He later married Reese, a choice that ignited the Emperor's jealousy. Consumed by lust, the Emperor demanded Reese as one of his concubines. When Ozma and Reese refused, they were branded enemies of the state and forced to flee their homelands. Their escape ended in blood. The Emperor unleashed his army, and Reese was killed during the pursuit. In the final act of cruelty, despite Ozma and Kazan having saved the entire empire from a powerful dragon, both men were condemned to death row. Kazan was subject to unspeakable torture, his tendons and muscle tissue destroyed, leaving him broken and crippled. With nothing left to lose, Ozma abandoned hope and swore vengeance not just against the Emperor, but against humanity itself. He turned to forbidden experimentation with chaos, unleashing it across the world. Cities fell, people twisted into monstrous abominations. The land itself became a nightmare. Kazan later revived through the Phantom Blade, was forced into a living hell, killing his own friends and allies, all corrupted by chaos. Ozma ultimately succeeded in assassinating the Emperor, but revenge offered no salvation. In the end, he was stopped by Kazan himself, Their lifelong bond severed in a final heartbreaking confrontation. Ozma didn't just destroy an empire, he destroyed the last remnants of his own humanity. Coming in at number 3 is the War Devil from Chainsaw Man Part 2. First he falls for Rizze, who turns out to be the bomb devil working for the KGB. Then there's Makima, who becomes an essential nightmare for him and everyone he cares about. And now he's tangled up with the War Devil, who someone managed to be an even bigger threat than Makima ever was. Bro really needs to stop thinking with his dick before the apocalypse hits again. Throughout Part 2, the War Devil is singularly obsessed with turning Denji into a weapon. That alone is terrifying. But things spiral completely out of control when the nuclear bomb devil is recreated, using her powers to skyrocket to near godlike levels. With that boost, she isn't just fighting anymore, she's actively trying to plunge the entire world into an eternal war, a conflict with no end and no survivors. Once her fight with Chainsaw Man begins, the collateral damage is unreal. She weaponizes the Statue of Liberty, wipes out the civilian population of Oregon and Michigan by turning their home states into weapons, and then somehow tops all of that by turning the American flag on the moon into a spear and hurling it at Denji. That's no escalation. That's cosmic insanity. It's been months since I first started working on this video, and a lot has changed since then. At the time of this recording, Chainsaw Man has officially come to an end. And honestly, I was pretty shocked by how abruptly it wrapped up. But despite that, there was one thing I really appreciated. Asa Mitika, the host of the War Devil, finally getting a happy ending. After everything she's been through, it felt earned. And yeah, I'm genuinely happy for her. Coming in at number 2 is the Paintress and her family from Claire Obscure Expedition 33. And just like my number 5 pick with the Maker and the Illuminati, I'm going to cheat a little here because this story only works when you look at the whole broken family together. At the beginning of the game, the Paintress is framed as an outright evil goddess. Every year, she erases an entire generation, each one exactly 1 year younger than the last. With humanity spiraling towards extinction, anyone 33 years old or younger is forced into a desperate race against time to stop her before the world is wiped clean. But as the truth slowly unfolds, everything changes. The Paintress isn't trying to destroy humanity, she's trying to save the painted world itself. Her actions are driven by unbearable grief after the death of her son, Versio. Versio was killed when a powerful group known as the Riders attempted to burn the Paintress out of existence. He died protecting his sister, who was left horribly scarred physically and emotionally by the attack. What looked like a divine cruelty was really a mother clinging to the last scraps of a dying world, desperately trying to keep it from fading away. And when Expedition 33 finally defeats the Paintress in what feels like a hard-earned victory, the nightmare still isn't over. Her husband, Renor, swears revenge and attempts to wipe out what remains of humanity altogether. With everything on the line, the heroes are forced to make impossible choices. Choices involving sacrifice, loss, and the acceptance that sometimes there are no clean victories. The Paintress and her family aren't villains because they're evil. They're villains because grief broke them and the world paid the price. Before we get to the number 1 villain of 2025, we need to give one last honorable mention, and honestly, this one hurts a little. Galactus arguably deserved a spot on this list more than most of the villains who actually made it. He tried to kidnap Franklin Richards, turned the entire world against the Fantastic Four, and threatened to devour Earth itself. On paper, that's peak villain material, and to be clear, the movie did an excellent job portraying him. This was finally a loyal, intimidating, and properly cosmic version of Galactus, something fans have waited years to see. The problem wasn't the character, it was the pacing. Somewhere around the halfway point, both Galactus and the movie itself started to lose momentum, and that dull stretch took some of the edge of what should have been an all-time great villain performance. So while Galactus was absolutely worthy and easily could have landed high on this list, that mid-movie showdown ultimately kept him just outside the rankings. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the number one villain of 2025. And now, the number one major threat of 2025 is, drumroll please, Vox from Hazbin Hotel. Vox was an absolute breakout villain this year. He was already shaping up to be dangerous in season 1, but season 2 cranked him up to 11 and shattered the dial. What makes Vox so compelling isn't just his power, it's how relatable he is. He's insecure, dependent on others, and desperate for control, and yet somehow still cunning, ruthless, and terrifyingly effective. Vox isn't the most creative villain, and that's exactly why he works. He steals ideas, repackages them, improves them, and weaponizes them better than anyone else. Before Hell, he was a ruthless weatherman who climbed the fame ladder by murdering anyone more popular than him. That obsession with attention and control eventually turned him into a cult leader, one who convinced his followers to commit suicide alongside him. In season 2, Vox reached his most dangerous form yet. He brainwashed Angel Dust into becoming his spy, captured Alistair, and even manages to turn Lucifer into his all-powerful weapon. At one point, he comes terrifyingly close to overthrowing heaven itself. And when Alistair finally escapes, Vox doesn't retreat, he doesn't regroup. He decides that if he can't win, then hell itself should burn. He's willing to wipe out everything, millions of souls, his own domain, the entire system, just to kill one rival. That level of obsession, escalation, and sheer nihilism is what cements him as the villain of the year. Vox isn't the strongest villain of 2025. He's the most dangerous because he's petty, insecure, brilliant, and completely unhinged. But that's just my opinion. Now I want to hear yours. Do you agree with my list? If not, who do you think should have made the list? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more villain breakdowns. Thank you all for watching. I hope today I earned your like and subscribe. I hope with your help I can turn this part-time hobby into a full-time career. So please, please, please hit the like and subscribe button and help the channel any way you can. Thank you very much for watching. So long, take care, and stay cool, fans.